Hi friends, today I've got a what we eat in the week video for you. So I'm going to be taking you through the week and showing you the meals that I make for every evening meal. There'll be 5 meals in this video, plus some bread recipes, because we're starting to reintroduce gluten and some dairy for my boys. And for now it's going really well. I'm using my Como Mio mill to make freshly milled flour, and they seem to be able to eat it, enjoy it and not feel poorly afterwards, so we're really happy about that. And that's why this week there's going to be a lot more bread and other things that I wouldn't normally be making for them. So I hope you follow along to the end to see all of the different recipes that I've got for you, and let's get cooking. Now the first thing that I'm getting started this morning is some bread. I'm going to be doing cinnamon rolls for breakfast tomorrow and some garlic rolls to go with the stew that I've got planned for tomorrow night. Before I start, I need to grind the flour. While the flour is milling, I'm going to get some white beans soaking because I'm going to need them for 2 meals this week. I'm preparing some bread dough for some cinnamon rolls for breakfast in the morning, and I'm going to be using the same dough to make some garlic knots, which we'll have for dinner this evening. So I'm not going to share this recipe with you because I haven't perfected it yet. It's basically a sandwich dough recipe, but I'm not completely happy with how it turns out. It's very dense, so I need to do some work on this before I share it with you. One thing I didn't do this time, which I normally do, is soak the flour, and I think that really helps the bread to come together and to rise nicely. So I need to make a mental note to make sure I do that every time. I'm going to leave these doughs to rise, and I'm going to do my normal stretch and folds throughout the day, and they will be ready to shape for dinner tomorrow. Now I'm going to get started on what we're having for dinner tonight, which is a salmon and asparagus quiche, which is a great spring recipe that I'm hoping to get out on the blog very soon. So keep your eye out for that. And I'm going to be making some pastry with some freshly milled flour. So I'm going to be using my sourdough pastry crust recipe, which is on the blog, but I'm going to be using it with freshly milled flour, so I need to alter the amount of sourdough starter that's going into it. So hopefully, if this works today, I will have that on the blog too very shortly. So I'm measuring out 170 grams of wheat berries, which I'm then going to grind. To the flour I'm going to add 125 grams of butter, and when you're making pastry you do need to make sure that your butter is very cold. So I've just got this out of the fridge and I'm using it straight away. And I like to make it into small cubes so that the process goes quicker. Now a teaspoon of salt, or half a teaspoon of salt maybe, and then I'm going to let it run in the KitchenAid with the paddle attachment until the mixture resembles breadcrumbs. In fact, the mixture will not resemble breadcrumbs, it looks more like a crumble topping. That's because there's a lot more butter to flour ratio in this recipe since I'm adding the sourdough starter afterwards. So don't worry if it doesn't look like breadcrumbs, that's completely normal. So I've added the sourdough starter. I'm experimenting, so I put 190 grams of sourdough starter in here because I found the last time I made it, it was a little bit difficult to roll out. So I brought it together quickly in the KitchenAid, and now I'm making it into a disc shape so that it's easy to roll out. And I'm going to put it in the fridge for 30 minutes to 1 hour until I'm ready to make the quiche. I'm preparing the salmon, which is going to roast in the oven while the pastry blind bakes. To blind bake the pastry, I make sure that my quiche dish is very well buttered. I'm going to roll out the pastry until it's slightly bigger than the quiche dish, and then I'm going to push the pastry into the quiche dish, prick it with a fork, remove any excess from over the top, put some baking parchment on top of the pastry, and then some lentils on top of that. You can also use dried beans or even baking beads, which do the same job. And then that will bake in the oven for 15 minutes at 200 degrees Celsius. So the water's just coming to a simmer now, and I've got some frozen asparagus here, and I'm going to cook the asparagus for just 5 minutes in the simmering water, not boiling, so that they're tender but not overcooked, because they will continue cooking in the quiche. If you're using fresh asparagus, you might find that you need to cook them for a little bit less than 5 minutes. Now to make the filling, you need 4 eggs, 3 tablespoons of flour, 400 millilitres of milk, and a little bit of salt. And you can find the recipe for this over on the blog. Whisk it really well to make sure that there's no lumps of flour, and then I just leave that on the work surface while everything else is being cooked and ready, and then I will add it to the quiche at the end. With every quiche I make, I like to smother the base with mustard. It adds so much flavour. Even to delicate fish, it doesn't overpower it, it just adds a really big punch of flavour, which we love. I flake the salmon onto the quiche base, and then I'm going to add some grated cheese to the egg and milk mixture, and I'll pour all of that over the salmon into the quiche. I like to make sure that the cheese is spread out evenly throughout the quiche, so I just move it around a little bit with a spatula, and then I'm going to arrange the asparagus on the top. This will bake in the oven for another 20 to 25 minutes until it's all golden brown. While that's baking, I'm going to do some stretch and folds on the bread dough that I got together earlier on. It's already looking really good. Now, because my boys are still dairy free, even though they can eat some gluten right now, I'm going to be making them a crustless quiche, which is basically an omelette that I cook in the oven. So I'm whisking up some eggs, putting the rest of the salmon in the pan, pouring over the egg mixture, and then I'm going to bake that. I think it was about 10 minutes in the oven at 180 degrees Celsius. This was an absolutely delicious evening meal. It was full of the flavours of spring, and we really enjoyed it with some carrot salad. Now this is the next morning, and the dough has been in the fridge, so it's nice and firm, and I'm going to spread it out on the work surface so that I can add my fillings. Now for the filling, I used Farmhouse on Boone's recipe for cinnamon and cardamom buns, which I will link in the description box below. The flavour was amazing. Even though the dough was not perfect, it still tasted really good. It was a real treat for us. Now I did have a little bit of difficulty doing these rolls because using sourdough to make rolls is not the easiest thing. The dough is quite hydrated and it's not easy to handle. It's something that I really need to practice, which to be honest is not going to be a hardship because these were delicious. I'm cutting up the dough using a pizza slicer into 12 strips. So I think you saw I covered just half of the dough with the cinnamon and cardamom and sugar mixture. I folded the other half of the dough over, and now I'm cutting it into strips which I'm going to be able to roll up. I'm putting them directly on a baking tray, and they're going to rise until they're nice and puffy in a warm spot in the kitchen. The garlic knots, I mixed together olive oil and some dried herbs. It would have been better with fresh herbs, which I'm going to be able to do soon because I have some growing in my garden, and also some garlic. So I'm using the same method. I'm spreading the mixture over the bottom half of the dough, and then I'm going to fold over the top half and cut it into 12 strips. But this time I'm not going to roll them, I'm going to twist them into a knot shape. Again, I need some practice with this. The recipe was not the best. They were a little bit dry, so I definitely need to do some work on this one. I think it might be better with butter, but since my boys can't eat butter, I need to find another solution to make it a little bit more delicious, a little bit tastier. Anyway, they turned out really well. They're nice and puffy. They're going in the oven, and then we're going to enjoy these for breakfast and for dinner tonight. I made a glaze to go on top of these cinnamon buns, and again you can get the recipe for that over on farmhouseonboone.com. And I'm also going to spread the rest of the herb and garlic oil over the top of the garlic knots, just for a little bit of extra moisture and deliciousness. So today's meal is, I'm basing it on my goulash recipe, which is on the blog, you can find it over there. But instead of using chopped pork, I'm using a pork shank that I've got in the freezer. And I'm going to add onions, peppers, carrots, and the beans that I soaked yesterday. So it's true, it's spring, but we're still craving some nice warming stews in the evening because it's still quite cool. So we're going to really enjoy this with those delicious garlic and herb rolls that I made earlier on.
I'm starting off by browning the pork shank while I get the vegetables ready.
So I've added all of the vegetables, the onions, the carrots and the peppers to the Instant Pot. I've actually taken the pork shank out so that the vegetables can saute down. I don't like to add raw vegetables when I'm going to be slow cooking something because I find that it gives a funny flavour to the sauce. So I do like to saute them first. So that's what I'm doing now.
In goes 2 tins of tomatoes, some garlic, some paprika, some cumin, some water and some salt. And I'm going to be adding the beans in just a minute.
Now I'm going to leave this to slow cook on high for, I'd say, about 5 hours. When it's cooked, I'm going to remove the pork shank, remove all of the meat and add it back to the stew. And that's going to be a really hearty dinner with beans, loads of vegetables. I think it's going to be absolutely delicious. Now I have to say, when I bought my Instant Pot, I was not impressed with the slow cook function. Now I found if you remove the rubber seal, then it cooks a lot better because some of the liquid can evaporate and the flavours concentrate. So I like to do this. I do the same thing when I'm making yogurt.
Now I have to correct myself here. This was not cooked after 5 hours of slow cooking. The meat was not cooked and the beans were not cooked. So I ended up having to cook it on pressure in my Instant Pot for 30 minutes. And then it was all cooked and it tasted fine. But it definitely needed more than 5 hours of slow cooking. And to be honest, using the pork shank this way was not the best. It's really greasy. Not sure I really 100% liked it. So I was wondering if any of you guys had any recipes for using up a pork shank. What do you like to do with it? How do you cook it? Do you slow cook it? Do you pressure cook it? What do you use it for? Now tonight is Wednesday and Wednesday means minced beef because it's on special offer in the butcher's on a Wednesday. So I always make minced beef on a Wednesday. And today is chili, which is one of our favourites. So you can get the recipe for this over on the blog. I'll leave the link in the description box below. But basically it's ground beef, tin tomatoes, soaked white beans and some spices. So I use garlic, paprika and cumin. I also add some onions in there and that's pretty much it really. This is one of our favourite dinners. I serve it with avocado. Today I'm going to be mashing up the avocado. It's not really guacamole, it's just mashed avocado with some salt and some lime. I'm going to be making a little bit of a salsa with some tomatoes and coriander and a little bit of lime juice. I'm also going to serve it with some sauerkraut, some crème fraîche, which is like sour cream, and some cheddar. Absolutely delicious.
tonight we've got a friend coming over for dinner and it was her birthday yesterday, so I thought I'd make a cake. I'm just going to make one of my normal chocolate cakes that they always go down a treat. You can make it gluten and dairy free if you like, but tonight I'm just going to make it with normal butter and wheat flour. You can find the recipe for that over on the blog. So in here we've got 250 grams of butter and 200 grams of dark chocolate, and I'm just going to melt that really gently together. I always leave it to melt before I stir it, so that's a hot tip for you. Let it melt completely before you stir it. While the chocolate and the butter are melting, I'm going to get going with the chicken for my honey mustard chicken casserole.
To make this honey and mustard chicken, I'm going to fry some chicken thighs until they're nice and brown. Then I'll remove them from the pan and add the vegetables. So today I'm using onions and carrots. I'm going to let those fry down, then add a little bit of water, and then it's going to cook in the oven for about 40 minutes. I've added some salt and now I'm adding a little bit of thyme for some extra flavour. The butter and the chocolate have melted and cooled down. That's really important to make sure that your mixture is not hot before you add the eggs. So mine is cooled down and I've added 4 eggs, 110 grams of flour with a tiny little bit of baking powder. You really don't need a lot. And now I'm adding 160 grams of sugar. You need to make sure that this is really well mixed up, nice and smooth, and look at that batter. Doesn't that look delicious? I think I could eat that with a spoon. But I am going to cook it and make it into a cake instead. In it goes into the oven at 180 degrees for 18 minutes. And the chicken has come out of the oven now. It's nicely brown all over. I'm removing the chicken onto a plate. I've taken out a little bit of the sauce to give to my boys before I add the cream. And I'm adding a couple of tablespoons of mustard, a couple of tablespoons of honey, and a few tablespoons of cream. I'm going to mix that all up together, bring it back up to the boil, add the chicken. This was amazing. It was so delicious. We served it with mashed potatoes and it was absolutely my favourite dinner this week. This is a recipe I completely made up off the top of my head, but I will try and write down some elements of it so that you can recreate it at home if you want to. Our friend was really happy with her birthday dinner and that chocolate cake was delicious. So I promised you 5 meals this week. I only made 4 because one of my best friends came in. She lives 2.5 hours away, so I don't see her very often. And she came with her family for dinner on Friday. And we actually got takeaway, which does not happen very often here. It was a really fun evening and I really enjoyed seeing her. But I hope I gave you a few ideas anyway of meals that you can make this spring. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!